In this video, I try to help you understand what the heck Games Workshop's been doing the last couple of weeks. So for those of you who don't keep up with the wargaming news, and I don't blame you, it's sometimes pretty feast or famine. Some days you get a lot of stuff, sometimes you don't get too much. But for those of you that don't keep up with it, it was definitely feast last week, at least as it relates to specifically Games Workshop. Last week was the GAMA Trade Show. GAMA is the Game Manufacturers Association, which should be the GMA, but whatever. So it's a thing that used to happen in Vegas. Now it happens in Reno, which is kind of like Vegas, but smaller. And I don't know. I've never been there, so I don't know if it's weirder or good. Anyway, it started happening now in Reno, Nevada. And it's a big thing where tons and tons and tons of gaming manufacturers, not just war games, but all kinds of different tabletop games, they all come to this place, set up booths, and then retailers, aka store owners, come and check things out. I'm sure that probably distributors are there going to it as well, but basically it's a place for the manufacturers to be able to talk directly to the people who want to buy their stuff to sell it to you and I. Now, for those of you who are veterans and have been paying attention to companies like Games Workshop for a long time, specifically Games Workshop, you will know that it's a little weird that they're at GAMA. They used to stay away from pretty much everything as far as, gaming conventions or anything along those lines. They stayed away for years, for the last, 5-6 years. Recently, they've started coming back. They've been at Gen Con. This year they're going to be at Adepticon, but they were pretty heavy at GAMA, from what I understand. And they did a thing at GAMA, which is a thing that you're supposed to do at GAMA, and that is they announced product ahead of time. Now, again, to the veterans, this will be very strange. To people who, just are like, oh, that's interesting. A company announced that they've got products coming out. That doesn't seem weird. No, and it doesn't for a normal company, but for Games Workshop, the way that the business has been running for quite some time, that's very strange for them to tell you ahead of time what's coming out. So they have been making changes. Already done a video about that, about the crazy things going on at Games Workshop. Pachow. But this is just step 12. This is more things that are just kind of crazy that they're happening, and these are the ones that happened this past week. Now, they talked about a new faction for Age of Sigmar, which is not really what I'm going to talk about in this video, but basically they're sky dwarves, kind of steampunky flying dwarves, covered head-to-toe in armor. The ships look kind of cool, frankly. I think that they're really neat looking. They also talked about a new Age of Sigmar-esque game called Warhammer Underworlds Shadespire. And it's, from what I understand, it's again a boxed game, and it's going to be something that is designed to be a little bit more competitive, according to them. So competitive play in this situation, the way they sort of vaguely explained it, and they said that they're going to talk more about it at Adepticon, but from the way it sounds to me, it almost sounds like it's maybe a gladiatorial type game that's designed for tournament play, which would be kind of interesting. It would kind of scratch that itch for the people who want to do that sort of thing. It would be great. But that's not what I'm really going to talk about either. What I really want to talk about is Shadow War Armageddon. So Shadow War Armageddon is a boxed game that's going to come with Space Marine Scouts and Orcs. And it's also coming with plastic terrain in the box. Now, as soon as they said, oh, and there's going to be terrain in the box, again, the GW veterans, those of us out here who've been doing this a while, were like, well, that sounds a little bit like Necromunda, doesn't it? And as we started to read more and more of it came out over the course of the couple of days during GAMA, basically they came out and said, yeah, it's pretty much going to be Necromunda. Now, the original Necromunda, the majority of the terrain was cardboard. Had like plastic connecting pieces, but otherwise it was printed cardboard. And it was fine for the day. Necromunda is from the 90s, by the way. But when that game first launched, again, it was a boxed game, and it was battles between gangs who all lived in the same giant hive planet. Hive planets are super overpopulated, huge planets that have been just built up, and these gangers have a tendency to fight over turf in the lowest parts, otherwise known as the underhive. So that was Necromunda, and Necromunda is well loved by many people. What Games Workshop is doing now here is they're taking the Necromunda rule set, which is not really the 40K rule set. It's a much more simplified, but still really enjoyable, well-liked kind of rule set. They're taking that, tweaking it just a tiny little bit, but otherwise pretty much keeping it the same, But they're not using the gangs anymore. Now instead, what they're going to be doing is using the normal 40K figures that you can already get. And on the Warhammer community site, they listed, oh, well, if you want to get started now, here's a bunch of different factions that are going to be playable and have rules within this Shadow War game. Now, this did start a little bit of a kerfuffle online. People were like, why are you changing it? Why don't you bring back all the gangs and do all that stuff? Why did you have to change Necromunda, blah, blah, all that kind of stuff? And I understand some of that, but if you start to think about it kind of rationally, and I know that's not always the easiest when we start talking about things that we love a lot, but if you think about it, if they had to create new molds, new figures, and do all that for all the different factions that happened in Necromunda, all the different gangs, it would take a really long time for those to come out. This situation, it allows you to basically use figures they're already making, which is good for you because you can go to stores immediately and buy whatever you want. You're not just stuck with the stuff that comes in the box. You can also use stuff maybe that you already have. I mean, honestly, one of the things that you can use in Shadow War is Necron Warriors, and I just got done painting a bunch of them, so I'm like ahead of the game. I've already got Orcs painted. I've got some actual Space Marine Scouts. All of these guys I was building for Kill Team. These are all ready to go. Now, that's interesting about Kill Team, though. As it turns out, Kill Team, which I also did a video about a while back about how I think the Kill Team's a good idea, pachow, Kill Team is no longer, the box set is no longer on the Games Workshop website. So if you've been thinking about getting Kill Team and your local store has a copy of the box set with 10 Space Marines and 13 Tau and all the other stuff, you should jump on it because I don't think it's being made anymore. There could be a lot of different reasons for why this is. One is because 8th edition could be coming, and these Kill Team box sets have the 7th edition mini rulebook inside. So they could be kind of planning ahead towards that. Now, all this being said, you can still buy the Kill Team instruction booklet, the ebook version, on their website or on iBooks or Google Books or any of those different places. So you can still play Kill Team if you want to. It's just that that box set is no longer being produced. And I think that maybe the idea is that this new game, Shadow War Armageddon, is being kind of laid down as like, well, here's your primer, here's your introduction into 40K. Now understand, a lot of what Games Workshop is doing these days is producing products to get new people into the hobby. The new regime understands that new blood is vitally important to their business model, frankly, and to really the entire hobby as a whole. It's a tough sell. I've done videos about that before. It's difficult to really explain to people, okay, so you want to play this game with all these little toys, but you have to build the toys and paint the toys yourselves. A lot of people don't really cotton to that. There are weirdos like myself who that's really the big thing. They love the building and the painting, but for a lot of people, that's not the big deal. So everything they're doing these days is going to still, I don't think they're going pre-painted anytime soon, but it's still going to be, hey, look, everything you need is in the box. All you got to do is build it and paint it. It's not that hard. Here, watch all these videos and figure out how to do it. And we show you step by step and all that kind of stuff. All that is designed. Shadow War, Age of Sigmar, all these different other box sets they keep creating are designed to get new people into the hobby. So this Shadow War thing, this new announcement, that's really something that's going to lead towards that. And I have a suspicion from what I've been reading and a little bit what I've been, just some guessing, I have a suspicion they're going to create more terrain to work with this set, but I'm sure the rules will allow you to use the terrain they already have or terrain that you might want to build. So if they would have had to have completely remake an entire line of models for this new game, the cost benefit probably wouldn't be there for them. But all they have to do is make some terrain that they probably had on the shelves, not really, but actually were in progress. They just had to make that terrain, fit it in the box, put in some models they already make a new rule set that was basically Necromunda, so it was not even really new, and then boom, now you've got a new vector to get new players into the hobby. I have a suspicion that's what's going on, and I understand that the people who are angry about the modifications and how that's not going to be gangers anymore and it's not Necromunda, well, it's not. It's using the Necromunda system, from what I understand. But, that's the way that they're kind of going. One of the craziest things about this entire announcement about Shadow War Armageddon was that it was coming out in April. So basically they said, hey, we've got all this stuff. We're showing it all off. It's all great. And, you know, in the past, anytime they talked about anything, it was coming out next week. Well, now they've started talking about stuff that's coming out in the future. So then you're like, well, now I have to wait. So, you know, as gamers, we're never happy. I get that. But this was amazing because they talked about it at GAMA, and it's going to be hitting stores in April. That's a great, in my mind, kind of, it's not a week, which is too little, but it's also not, well, we're going to be doing this by the end of the year, which is too long. This is, I think, a really smart move on their part as well, especially since with first GAMA and now Adepticon, they'll be able to talk more about it. I have a suspicion, for those of you that don't know, if you're watching this on the day that came out, which is March 24th, 2017, this is the second day of Adepticon. I'm filming this on the 20th, Monday night, because I'm going to be going to Adepticon. So right now, while you're watching this, if you're watching it on Friday or Saturday during Adepticon, I am currently there, playing games, possibly drinking bourbon, possibly sleeping. You don't know, you know. But the fact of the matter is, I believe that I will be seeing a lot more about Shadow War right now at Adepticon. The news will be coming out. You'll be seeing it, not necessarily through my channel right away, but probably through a bunch of other places. And I think that this is really indicative of the new Games Workshop. And I think it's really important that they make another one of these games that has kind of the retro value to the veterans who are okay with the fact that it's not gangs. You know, it's Necromunda, but without gangs. For those of us that are okay with it, I'm on board. I'm going to get this. But it's also going to be something great for new people into the hobby, or for people like me who want to try to get new people into the hobby. I could easily see running a game of this at a local convention. I would never run a game of 40K at a local convention. I don't even know if I'd want to run a demo of Age of Sigmar at a local convention. But this, I could easily see running at a local convention. The first time I saw Necromunda was just being played at a table in the open gaming area at Gen Con back when it was still in Milwaukee. So for those of you that are disappointed that this is not Necromunda per se, you know, there are reasons why. It would be very costly for them to recreate all of those gangs and go through all that stuff. This is I think, good sort of compromise that will still bring that kind of play style back into, you know, the hobby, but it will also hopefully be able to get new people into the hobby. I'm really looking forward to it because I enjoyed Necromunda the few times that I did play it. I watched it a lot more than I actually played it. And again, it was frequently at conventions and things like that. But the fact is that, you know, the fact I can take the models that I've already got or that I've already been building or that are already finished, whatever, and use those in the game, it makes sense. It makes sense from a business aspect because if your first, you know, foray into the world of Games Workshop hobby is Shadow War Armageddon and you build yourself some models so you can play and you find some cool stuff, all of a sudden you're like, well, you know, if I just built this and this and this, I'd have, you know, the beginnings to a such and such army, and then I could start playing 40K. Like everything kind of funnels in and that makes sense. So I think that this is going to be good for the hobby. I think it's going to be good for, probably for Games Workshop, but really things that are good for Games Workshop are very frequently good for the hobby, at least these days, because rising tide raises all ships. More people that see the big 800-pound gorilla in the industry, the more people come into the hobby, and maybe they fall away, but maybe they start playing bolt action, or maybe they start playing, you know, something else, something small and indie. The fact of the matter is that this is, I think, for when I first heard of it, I was astounded, and I thought it was going to be a great move. So I hope that if you're interested in this, you take a look at it. Let me know in the comments if you're disappointed, happy, confused, anything like those lines. And as I'm at, you know, Adepticon basically right now, if you're watching this on the day the video goes live, I'll be finding out more, and I'll be letting you guys know about it as soon as I can.